Hi book lovers, welcome back to my channel. I'm here today to do my November wrap up. I read about 19, 20 if you count a DNF, but I read 19 books last month. It was a slower month for me, but I have slowed down in general this year. But I do have some fun books to talk about today, so I'll start off with the first book that I read last month, which is Obsessed by Serena Akeroyd. This one is a dark, forbidden romance that is also kind of a bully romance. It's a professor-student romance. Nicholas is the professor hero, and Phoebe is his student. And for some reason that I don't really understand, Nicholas becomes Phoebe's bully in addition to being her professor. She's a hardworking student as well. Like, she's going through a lot. She's currently working 2 jobs in addition to being a student. She has to take care of her younger brother because their mother is just not, she's checked out. And Nicholas, as soon as he lays eyes on Phoebe, like without her even knowing, he becomes instantly obsessed, and instead of doing something reasonable about this, he decides to make her life hell. He coerces her into this relationship, the sexual relationship that she eventually does grow to want. They somehow fall in love, though I never really saw why she fell for him. Like, I could see the other way around because Phoebe is a really incredible heroine. She's strong and she's smart, even dealing with all the stuff that she's been dealt with. But Nicholas, I guess it's just because he was hot. So I gave this one 3 stars. It was okay. The audiobook was fantastic. I love the narration, but the story itself was not the best for me. But then again, I'm not usually a huge bully romance fan anyway. My second read of November was On the Hustle by Adriana Herrera. This is book 2 in the Dating in Dallas series, and it's my favorite so far. It was much better than book 1. It was so much fun to read, and I love that even though it's your fairly typical boss assistant romance, well, it's a former boss assistant romance, it still has a lot of uniqueness to it. So here Alba absolutely hates her job. She hates working for her boss because he is a hard ass. Theo is insanely demanding, so she finally decides to quit in order to pursue her passion. Her dream job is to decorate bookish themed rooms, which I thought was really interesting. What she doesn't know though is that Theo has had the biggest crush on her since forever, but with the whole power imbalance with their jobs, he obviously never did anything about it. But now that she's not working for him anymore, now that she's moved all the way to Dallas, he follows her there to ask her for a favor. He wants her to join him on this home improvement reality TV show so that she can get some good publicity for her career. He was actually gonna refuse doing this TV show thing, but then he realized this was his chance to get Alba back into his life. So he went all the way to Texas to ask her to help him. So if you love a pursuing hero and a clueless heroine, this is going to be a fun read. In general though, I do love the way Adriana Herrera writes, her chemistry and her banter. Theo is the perfect grumpy pining hero, and Alba was a great heroine as well. I loved how unique her passion was, like her job. I've never come across something like that. I didn't even know that it was even a job. But this is a great read if you love like boss assistant romances, if you love romances that are set on reality TV shows. There's a lot of good tropes here. Oh, and a pining hero. So this one I gave 4 stars to. I then read River of Shadows by Karina Halle. This was a fantastic fantasy romance. It's the start of a new series and I am very invested. I give it 4 stars. It's a fantasy romance that's based on Finnish mythology, and it has both Beauty and the Beast vibes and Hades and Persephone vibes, 2 of my favorite retellings, and the hero here is literally the god of death. If you read this one, I highly recommend the audiobook. That was how I read it, and it was amazing because I love the narrator so much. But the book is about a girl named Hannah who decides to go to Finland to attend her father's funeral. Things start to get a little weird for her though when her father's body goes missing, and it turns out that he's been taken by the god of death. He's a shaman who's being held captive by death, and Hannah goes all the way to the underworld where Death lives in order to trade places with her father. The romance is slow here. It is quite slow burn, especially because we don't even meet Death. We don't meet the hero until maybe a third of the way through the book, but we do get a lot of good world building here. It's very dark and creepy. It was pretty interesting seeing like Finnish mythology in a fantasy romance because I don't think that's fairly common, but I did really like this first book in the Underworld God series. There's a lot of setup for the romance, for the world. The romance is mostly just physical here between Hana and Death, which I mean is still great to read. They're really hot together, but the actual feelings between them grow very slowly. It reminds me a lot of the older urban fantasy series that I used to read back in like 2012, where it took, you know, several books for the romance to develop. So this is bringing me back, but I did really like it and I'm definitely going to be continuing with the rest of the series. I also read one of my most anticipated reads of the second half of 2022. This is Unbroken Bonds by Bree. It's the 6th and last book in the Bonds That Tie series. I became obsessed with the series back in July because Bree was supposed to go to a Polycon. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it, but I thought I would read her. I would try her out. I would see if I liked her enough to, you know, buy a book and get it signed by her. I ended up loving the series and also not meeting the author. So Unbroken Bonds is the last book in the series, so it's kind of hard to talk about it without any spoilers, so I'll just be super vague about it, but I will say I didn't love this one quite as much as I wanted to. It's like 4 stars. It's a very generous 4 stars, more like 3.5 to 4 stars for me. It wasn't the best ending. I mean, I still liked it, but it was kind of anticlimactic here. When we got to the big final battle, the big showdown, it kind of happened very quickly, and I was surprised things were over just like that. But I mean, it's not a terrible ending, it just wasn't exactly the epic finale that I was expecting. This book is also probably my least favorite of the series as well, but I'm still happy that Ollie and her 5 guys finally got their happily ever after so much turmoil and pain. The whole series itself, I still do love it. It's been such a trip and I'm still really glad that I read it, even though I never met Bree and the ending was less than perfect. I also read the 3 books in the Daring Duke series by Emily Howard. It's her latest historical romance series and it was a lot of fun to read. Book 1 is The Princess Stakes and it's a second chance romance between a half Indian princess and her first love. Back when Rhyston and Serena first met, Rhyston wasn't a duke yet. He hadn't inherited his dukedom. He was just some captain, and according to Serena's father, wasn't at all good enough for his daughter. So Serena's father is the reason why she broke things off with him and broke Rhyston's heart. Fast forward years later and Serena's father, the Maharaja, he has just been murdered and Serena is now running for her life. She's trying to escape from the people who killed her father, so she runs onto a boat and of course, it's being captained by none other than Rhyston, who is not at all happy to see her. He is very, very pissed because she broke his heart and he's never been able to get over that. But they are forced into some good proximity because they are stuck together on this tiny boat all the way to London. Their sea travels was definitely my favorite part about this book just because of the forced proximity and the angst and tension that was hanging between them. There's so much push and pull and these two can't exactly avoid each other that much while they're stuck on a boat. When they do finally arrive in London, that was when the book started to fall a little bit flat for me. It wasn't as exciting anymore, but I did still enjoy it overall. Book 2 is Rules for Heiresses. This is my least favorite of the series. I gave it 3 stars. It's got a marriage of convenience between a rebellious heiress who is the sister of the hero from book 1. She's the one who never wanted to marry because she wanted a life of independence, and a new duke who's just inherited his dukedom that he never wanted. Ravenna and Cortland knew each other when they were children. They were childhood frenemies, and unfortunately he was forced away. He was forced to move away because of his evil stepmother who hated him because of his mixed heritage, but now they're all grown up, and when they reunite in present day, they're caught in a compromising position, which is why they're forced into a marriage of convenience. It's a pretty classic historical romance with a marriage of convenience. Both the main characters try to keep the marriage in name only and keep all their feelings out of it, so if you like those kinds of historical romances, you'll probably enjoy this one. I just sadly wasn't feeling the romance here. I never grew invested in it or in the main characters. The best thing was probably the steam here, because the series is hot. If you love your historical romances on the steamier side, definitely read Amelie Howard. But other than the steam, everything else was just okay for me. The latest book in the series, the third book, is The Duke in Question, and this is my favorite. I gave it 4 stars. I loved that it was a spy romance, that both the main characters are spies. It's an enemies to lovers romance and a brother's best friend romance. The hero, the Duke hero, is a former agent for the crown, but Valentine still does some spying even though he's retired. And then the heroine Bronwyn is his best friend's little sister, and no one knows that she has her own secrets, that she herself is a spy. And right now Bronwyn is trying to deliver these secret letters to someone, and Valentine is on the hunt for those secret letters, and he has no idea that she's the one in possession of them. It was so funny how Bronwyn would put on this air of being, you know, spoiled and vapid and childish in front of Valentine, and he would just hate it and dismiss her, and it was the perfect cover-up for her because he truly had no idea that she was the one with those letters. Bronwyn schools Valentine so many times. It was so fun to read. He kept being so confused over her and over his feelings for her, because one moment she's this silly heiress, and then the other she is smart, intelligent, serious. It was kind of hilarious to see, and I did love this theme, especially in this book. I mean, their first time together was up against a tree, and Bronwyn was literally like, yes, give it to me. She's definitely the kind of heroine who knows exactly what she wants and gets it. So both the main characters were fantastic. I love the romance here. The steam was great. It was such a good read. My next read was Undone by the Ex-Con by Talia Hibbert. I've been making my way through her backlist just because my library keeps getting her audiobooks, and this one is another one of her very hot, very quick and tropey romances. We have an ex-con hero who has become the self-made man. He has become very wealthy, which is a huge change from how he lived his life growing up. And he made his wealth and his fame through writing nonfiction, through writing about his time in prison. And then the heroine is a former professional ballerina. She did come from money. She came from a very wealthy family, but after getting diabetes, she had to give up her ballerina career. Now she works as a private dance teacher, and Lizzie and Isaac meet because of her employer, who is also Isaac's publisher. Her boss slash the publisher blackmails Lizzie into trying to seduce Isaac and get him to sign this really unfair publishing contract. So when Isaac and Lizzie first meet, he has no idea that she has ulterior motives. So there's some secrets, some deceptions here in this romance, but it is still a very classic Talia Hibbert with a big grumpy alpha hero who becomes instantly obsessed with the heroine. He's head over heels in love with her, and she's feeling very torn between the blackmail and Isaac. I like this one. I can't say that I loved it. I gave it 3 stars. It was fine. It was an okay read. It's quick and it's hot if that's the kind of read that you're looking for, but I've definitely read better from Talia Hibbert. I then read a book that I had been very curious about, which is The Dark King by Gina L. Maxwell. This one I've been looking forward to reading just because it's the kind of romance where the main characters accidentally get married in Vegas, but it's a little different because it's paranormal and the hero is fae. And it actually turned out to be so good. I really like this one. I give it 4 stars. We have a human heroine who knows nothing about the paranormal world. She doesn't know that non-humans exist. Brynn goes to Vegas, which is where the hero lives. She's been offered like these free airplane tickets, this free hotel stay, so obviously she takes that. She goes to Vegas, she goes to stay at the hero's hotel. He is the billionaire owner, and she pretty much stumbles across Caden her first night. As soon as they meet eyes, they have this instant connection. It's really hot, but then when they wake up, they have rings on their fingers and they realize that they've drunkenly gotten married. Sadly for Brynn, it's not that easy to get a divorce or a separation because Caden is none other than the king of the night court fae, and now that he's married, he can't physically be apart from Brynn, otherwise he'll die. So she's forced to stay in Vegas against her will. There's some light captivity here, which was fun. Brynn was hilarious though. She definitely didn't make it easy on Caden or his brothers because, you know, they've kidnapped her. Caden is very much your alpha paranormal hero who is all growly. He's all alpha and he thinks that he can make the heroine do what he wants, but of course he can't. I really like this one. It made me remember how much I love paranormal romances and how I don't read them as much as I used to, which kind of sucks, but it's a great paranormal romance, and the ending does do a little setup for the next couple, for the next book, and I'm really excited for it. My next read was What Was Meant to Be by QB Tyler. I've been waiting for a new QB Tyler forbidden taboo romance, and she finally gave us one. What Was Meant to Be is an age gap forbidden romance between the heroine and her parents' best friend, who is also her godfather. QB Tyler would write something like this, and I love her for it. So this one, Whitney, she is our young heroine. She has been in love with her godfather since she could remember. When she turns 18, she finally makes her move on him, and at first he's like, whoa, what's going on? But he's also intrigued because he hasn't seen her for a while. And when he sees her again for the first time, he is very shocked by how hot she is, how grown up she is. He's feeling all these feelings that he's not supposed to for his goddaughter, but they can't resist each other, so they do start up this whole forbidden affair without telling her parents. And it does go on for a long time until JP puts a stop to it because of all the lies and secrecy. He can't really do it anymore, so he breaks off their relationship and breaks Whitney's heart. He leaves the country to do some doctor volunteer work, and fast forward a couple years and now he's back, but Whitney is engaged and JP is not happy about it. He's actually pissed. He has no right to feel this way and he knows it, but he's still mad because he knows that Whitney is it for him and he knows that they're meant to be. He realizes that he's made a mistake with letting Whitney go, and he does everything he can to win her back. My girl Whitney doesn't make it easy for him though, thank God. He absolutely wrecked her when they broke up, so she's not gonna fall back into bed with him so easily. But there is cheating, there is a ton of angst, so much tension between these two. JP was all hot and possessive, and he was great once he finally got his head out of his ass. I loved seeing him go all in with Whitney, and of course it gets really dramatic with all the over-the-top stuff when the parents find out. And since it is QB Tyler, it is very, very hot. There's a great pegging scene that I didn't expect, but I thought it was chef's kiss. I give this book 4 stars. It's another great read from QB Tyler. She's pretty much like the queen of taboo romances now. My next read is a complete 180. I went from taboo filthy romance to a rom-com. This is The Stand-Up Groomsman by Jackie Lau, and I give it 3 stars. It's the sequel, like a standalone sequel to Don't Not Fall in Love, but this one I didn't enjoy quite as much as the other one. It's about the best friends from book 1 and them getting their romance. Melvin and Vivian have an opposites attract kind of romance. These two are very different and they don't like each other. They don't have a great relationship even though they're best friends or about to get married, because when these two first met, Melvin was so rude to her. Vivian works in finance. She has this steady corporate job even though her real passion is in art. And when these two first met, Melvin criticized this about her. He said that she's wasting her life, that she should pursue her passion, and he said all these awful rude things, and he thought he had every right to say this because he did this. Like, he gave up his steady job to pursue being a comedian. So they don't connect for very clear reasons, but now that they're best friends or getting married, they are forced to be together, be around each other for the wedding stuff. They have to play nice together, and this is when they finally realize that first impressions aren't always right, that there is a lot more to the other person than they thought. I generally enjoy reading Jackie Lau. I love reading Asian romances from an Asian author, but I just wasn't feeling Melvin and Vivian here. I couldn't get into the romance just because anytime these two were together, they would say some annoying things. It's also not that funny for a rom-com. Melvin is supposed to be a comedian. He's a stand-up comedian, and he does perform a few times in the book, but the actual performances weren't funny at all. I appreciated that the author was trying to do something a little bit different with these characters and with the romance, but I just wasn't feeling it. My next read is a holiday romance. I read You're a Mean One, Matthew Prince by Timothy Janofsky. This was my book club's November book club read. It was fine, nothing special or amazing. I give it 3 stars. It's fun for the holiday season, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it any other time. It's an MM romance. We have one of our heroes who comes from wealth. He is very spoiled and he pretty much lives as an influencer. Matthew has never experienced any true consequences in his life because he has so much money, but now he finally does. He messes up when he buys this island, and now his parents have shipped him off to the small town where his grandparents live. And not only that, he's forced to room with a guy. He has to share a space, a whole bunk bed with a guy named Hector, and Hector doesn't like him right off the bat. Matthew is your typical spoiled rich boy in a very Hallmarky type of way. So he's got a lot of growing up to do. He's got a lot of humbling to do, and being in this small town and being forced to share space with Hector works on him. The whole bunk bed part was probably my favorite thing about this book though. I thought it was so funny that Hector and Matthew had to share bunk beds, and Matthew would constantly hit his head and he would get so annoyed by Hector's snoring, but then grew to love his snoring. There were some cute moments, I'm not gonna lie. It's still, you know, a cutesy little holiday romance. It was like watching a holiday movie, but in book form. You know exactly how things are gonna play out. I do wish we had gotten Hector's point of view. We only get Matthew's, so maybe if we gotten both point of views, I would have liked this one a little bit more. But overall, it was just a simple holiday romance. I read another holiday romance next. This is Just Like Magic by Sarah Hogle, and this was the strangest holiday romance that I have ever read. It was so weird, and the way it was written was so strange, and this wasn't in a good way. I'm giving it like 2.5 stars. The heroine Betty is an influencer, and everyone thinks she's living the high life because that's what she portrays to the public, but what they don't know is that she is flat broke. Her parents cut her off and everything, but because she's still posting on her social media, her parents also think that she's not struggling at all. Then during the holidays, she gets drunk and plays this vinyl recording of All I Want for Christmas Is You, but she does it backwards, which is how she conjures up a holiday spirit named Hall, short for Hall-E Day, and his job is to make her appreciate her life and not just focus on the superficial stuff. In order to do that, and in order to be around her, he agrees to pretend to be her fake fiance because she has to go visit her family for the holidays and she doesn't want to lose face in front of them. So it's pretty much a fake dating holiday romance, but the hero is a literal holiday spirit, and it sounds good-ish in theory, but things were so over the top and insane. Betty is slightly unhinged, her family is very unhinged, Hall himself is very dorky in a golden retriever kind of way, but it wasn't endearing because of how over the top it was. The whole book was just too out there, way too quirky for me, and I could not enjoy it. Next up, I read Funny You Should Ask by Alyssa Sussman. This book I read because it was part of the Goodreads Choice Awards. It was nominated in the romance category, and I had never heard of it before. It ended up being one of the worst books in that list for me. I gave this one 2 stars. I didn't like it. I didn't like the romance at all, even though it's a second chance romance, which is normally my favorite. Gabe is the celebrity actor hero and Hani is the journalist, and these two met a decade ago because she went to go interview him for a weekend because he had just been cast as the new James Bond. He was her celebrity crush, so she was very excited to spend time with him, get to talk and interview him. And it's over this weekend that Gabe and Honey formed this really quick and short romance. Their relationship, if you can call it that, literally happens over the span of this weekend because after it, they never talked to each other again. Honey thought something would come out of it, but Gabe never contacted her, and it's been 10 years now since these two fell in love-ish that weekend. Honey is now divorced, Gabe is still the big movie star that he is, and everyone keeps asking Honey if she actually hooked up with Gabe that weekend. So to set things straight, she agrees to do a second interview with Gabe, and this is how their second chance begins. But what I never understood was how this girl was able to pine over Gabe for literally the past 10 years. She's never been able to stop thinking about him, even though he is one of the blandest heroes I've ever read. I was just like, why? How is it possible for you to be that invested in this dude who is giving nothing? I just didn't understand the romance because the hero wasn't doing anything for me, and it's also the kind of second chance romance where a lot of the book takes place in the past. Like a good chunk of the book is just flashbacks, just set in the past, and I didn't care about that at all. So I felt zero chemistry in the main characters, and I didn't believe in the romance at all. Next up, I read Enticing the Scrooge by Jessa Kane. Jessa finally gave us a Christmas romance this year, and it's just as insane as you would expect from her. The hero is the grandson of Ebenezer Scrooge, and he needs a bride in order to get his inheritance. So he hosts this ball, this party over the holidays. He invites eligible ladies, and then the heroine shows up at his door. She is not one of the ladies who was invited. She is an orphan beggar, and she's come to ask for money for help for the children that she's taking care of. Obviously, it's love at first sight for the hero. He takes her for his own, but then he messes up in thinking that she's actually a gold digger. So he has to grovel and beg for forgiveness. It was fine. It's not the best Jessa Kane novella that I read, but it did hit the spot for the holidays, so I give it 3 stars. I read yet another holiday romance this month. I read Love Light Farms by BK Borison. Everyone and their mother has been talking about this book. I've been seeing it everywhere, so I finally decided to read it, and it was so cute. I gave it 4 stars. I was really excited when I saw that it was a Friends to Lovers Christmas romance because I love Friends to Lovers. Stella and Luca are our best friends. Stella has just taken over this farm, this Christmas tree farm, but she needs a lot of help and a lot of money to save it. So she enters this contest with an influencer to get some publicity and also hopefully win the $100,000 cash prize. And unfortunately, she put on the application that she runs this Christmas tree farm with her boyfriend that does not exist. So this is where Luca comes in, where her best friend comes in, and she asks him to pretend to be her boyfriend when the influencer goes to visit the farm. We have a very good pining hero here, which I always adore. You can very clearly tell how hard Luca has been pining for Stella and how long he's been pining too. Even though Stella is completely oblivious. She's clueless, she's in denial about her feelings for Luca, about Luca's feelings for her, and she doesn't want to rock the boat, she doesn't want to give up their friendship to risk that friendship. I can see why people felt that she was frustrating, but I personally didn't mind it. I thought they were really cute together. I love the whole fake dating aspect. I thought the Christmas tree farm thing was super cute to read. All the side characters in the small town, all the side characters who worked on this farm with Stella were great. It was pretty much exactly the feel-good read that I wanted for the holidays, so it totally worked for me, and I will eventually get to reading the rest of the series because I did really like the author's writing. I then read the new Tessa Bailey. I read Happenstance, and this one I am so sad to say I did not love it. I gave it 3 stars. You have no idea how excited I was to read this too because it's a freaking reverse harem from Tessa Bailey. I thought it was gonna be an instant hit. I thought I was gonna love it, but it was a bit of a letdown. It was a very surface level kind of romance, which isn't too uncommon with Tessa Bailey. I mean, when you read her, you know you're in for a good and hot time, but I kind of wanted a little bit more from this. I had higher expectations, I guess. So we have a heroine named Elise, who is the kind of person who's never been able to keep a job. She's never been able to stay at one job, but she does have aspirations for being a journalist, so she thinks it's a great idea to follow these political figures around New York and try to catch them, take photos of them doing something shady. During this stakeout, she gets stuck in a cable car with 3 strangers, 3 completely different men, and these 3 guys, of course, become Elise's harem. We have Tobias, who is the British porn star who hides behind this facade of sarcasm, who never takes anything seriously. We have Gabe, the sweet and clueless construction worker who also loves to steal stuff from Elise. And then there's Banks, who is the quiet rugby star, the former rugby star turned rugby coach, who has some mommy issues. They're all different, they all have their different personalities, and they all want Elise. At first, they're competitive with each other over her. They get jealous, each of them wants her for himself, but then they all of a sudden randomly come to realize that they can only have her if it's as a harem, as a reverse harem. I personally didn't really buy this sudden change, but I just went with it because it's Tessa Bailey. It's a shorter read and I can see Tessa trying to put some depth, some character growth in the story, but it was just a bit too silly to be believable. I think if it was just a short and smutty reverse harem novella, it could have worked better, but trying to make a full-on story here wasn't executed that well, so it ended up being just an okay read. And then my second to last read of November was A Matter of Temptation by Stacey Reid. I've been so excited to start this new Stacey Reid series because I love her books, I love her historical romances. This one starts off with such a fantastic beginning. The heroine Mina is ruined in the eyes of society, so she hides away at her family's estate. Unfortunately, her family's finances aren't doing so well, and her brother has gambled away everything and also called for a duel against an earl. So her brother is getting ready to duel the hero, Simon, and possibly lose his life. So Mina's like, no, I'm going to go in your place because I actually know how to shoot. She dresses up, pretends to be a man, pretends to be her brother at the duel, but then the truth comes out and Simon of course realizes that Mina is not her brother, but she's a woman. Pretty much from the beginning you can tell what kind of heroine Mina is, how protective she is of her family. She's headstrong and fierce and willing to take on anything, and I love that about her. And ever since this duel, Simon has not been able to stop thinking about Mina, and eventually they find each other again and he hires her as his secretary. He's very involved in politics. He wants to pass this reform bill and he needs Mina's help to do so. And like with any Stacey Reid book, the tension and chemistry here is fantastic. I love the whole boss secretary trope here. Simon is grumpy as hell. He hates smiles and everything. He tries his best to keep Mina away from him, to keep her away from his heart, but of course he ends up falling head over heels for her. He falls so hard. I love seeing a grumpy hero fall this hard for the heroine. It's just so romantic and so sweet. It's another hit from Stacey Reid. I really enjoyed it, so I give this one 4 stars. And then my final book of November was You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akeroyd Amazy. This one was another book that I read for the Goodreads Choice Awards, and it was fine. I gave it 3 stars. It was interesting. It sounded good in theory. It's like a forbidden, slightly forbidden age gap romance, so obviously I was interested in reading it, but the way it was executed was not that great. Faye, the heroine, is an artist who lost her husband in an accident years ago, but she's still grieving him. But then her best friend Joy encourages her to get back into the dating scene finally. And I actually really like this beginning, how these 2 women just went all in when it came to dating and hookups. They would just get what they wanted from men or women in Joy's case. But things start to get a little messy when a guy named Nasir shows interest in Faye, but she doesn't reciprocate this. She doesn't really see him as anything more than a friend, and he's like, okay, that's fine with me. So he invites her on this luxury trip to this tropical island where his dad is staying, and his dad is a well-known celebrity chef, and he is the hero of this story. Alim and Faye feel this instant connection as soon as they meet, and this is when things went downhill for me because it was pretty much just insta-love, and I was like, where did this come from, and how are you already so into each other after days. It was literally days before Lim was ready to throw away his relationship with his son and his daughter, who didn't approve of Faye and Lim together. So he was willing to throw away his relationship with his kids to be with Faye. And I will at least give her props because she was like, don't do this. But I just didn't buy the romance here. I wasn't feeling the romance between these two. And I honestly wouldn't really call this a romance. The book definitely focuses more on Faye and her dealing with her grief, trying to move on, building a new life for herself, and then falling in love with her friend's father. I did enjoy the writing though. I would recommend reading this one if you're looking for something more fiction-y. Then again, a lot of fiction readers are calling this romance, so I don't know. All I know is that there were some interesting aspects to this book, but I didn't fully love it. My one DNF this month, I guess I'll mention, is Machiavellian by Bella Di Corte. This book I tried so long to read. It took me months before I decided to finally give it up, and I made it about halfway through, but I don't know, I just could not get into this one. I'm not really counting it as a read book, but I just thought I would mention it. And that is it for my November wrap up. Those are all 19 books that I read last month. As always, let me know if you've read any of these books. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Links to everything will be down in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye!